I think so. All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. My name is Amy Kais, and I am the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at NYU Abu Dhabi, here in Abu Dhabi. And I'm super excited about this webinar today. And I'm excited for everybody to meet our panelists, which you will be able to see shortly. Very briefly, I'm going to talk about the webinar. So we're going to go through, we're going to have a polling, some quick questions, and then we'll have introductions from the, well, actually we'll do introductions first. We're going to have some quick polling, and then we're going to go through some questions. This is just a Q&A for everybody to ask all of our panelists. I've asked some questions. I have the questions already laid out. We're going to ask them, go through everybody, but then we'll leave some time at the end for everybody to ask their questions. And so, oh, let's see if I can go through. Go back. All right, so here is who we have with us today. So I'm your moderator. We have a great group of panelists. I did not put together this panel. I am amazed that we have people from around the world. I feel very lucky to be a part of this, and everybody's actually in a decent time. So it's not too crazy. There's nobody here that it's at 1 a.m. Or 3 a.m. So it's super excited to have all of you here today. These are some instructions. So everybody should see the Q&A and you should see the chat. Please, if you want to ask questions to the panelists, enter them into the Q&A. We can see them, the panelists can see them. If it's an individual question to a specific panelist and to their institution, you can direct it directly towards them. They may be able to answer it during the webinar. If not, we can definitely find a time for you to follow up later. And then if you are going to chat, the chat is more just a chat with everybody, but we may not have time to actually, probably won't have time to look into the chat and monitor those as we go through the webinar. And then finally, just one last reminder, if all of you have not signed up for the conference that is taking place in July, I encourage you to do so. I actually did it today, and it took me less than 5 minutes. It was just a couple clicks, and it was very easy to do. So I encourage you to do it when you can. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so you can actually just see all the panelists before we get started. And before I ask everybody to introduce themselves, I just want to take a moment and take a step back and just say that all of us recognize that this is a really hard time right now and within the United States and around the world. This has been a very hard and sad week. And we would be remiss if we didn't bring it up. So thank you, Jen, for recognizing that before we started it today. And just understand that we feel you. It's actually hard being outside the United States right now, but we do understand that this is a challenging time for all of us across the world. All right, with that, I just would ask for all of my panelists to introduce themselves briefly, your name, what institution you are from. So Megan, I'm going to start with you.
Hey everybody, I'm Megan Minkarian-Stem. I'm the Director of International Enrollment at Creighton University, located in Omaha, Nebraska in the US, right in the middle of the US where it's 6 a.m., so bright and early here.
Thank you, Megan. All right, Vicky, you're next.
Right, so hi everyone, my name is Vicky Chan. I'm the Senior Manager at the University of Hong Kong, and I mainly work with students who hold international qualifications applying to our undergraduate programs on campus.
Right, Banar, you're next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. So my name is Banu Hadrug. I'm the head of admission, student recruitment, and corporate marketing at Jacobs University Bremen in Germany.
All right, I'm sorry, Jennifer, you're next.
Good morning, everybody from Montreal. It's Jennifer Peterin from McGill University, and I've been at the university for 20 years and oversee all of our Canadian high school, U.S. high school, and overseas high school recruitment initiatives. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jen. See, I already got sucked into the first Q&A and I lost track. All right, Holly, you're next.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Holly Smith from the University of Sussex. My job there is regional manager for Europe specifically, and I sit within our wider international office at the university. The University of Sussex is in Brighton, which is a coastal city right on the south coast of the UK, 1 hour from London.
All right, so if it all works well, we are going to launch some polling at this moment. So here goes. I'm launching the poll. So I'm going to give you everybody a few seconds to answer. I feel like I should be playing music. Do, 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 do. 82% have voted. 83, it's slowing down. All right, we're going to end the poll and we're going to share the results so everybody can see who's with us. Who's in the audience? Our secondary school members are out in numbers. That's awesome. Appreciate everybody who is here today. College, university, independent organization, and other. That's great. All right, we have one more poll. Oh, did I? All right, let's see, poll closed, share results. Did I already do this? Yeah, stop sharing. Okay. I don't need to relaunch poll 1. Let's see if I can go to poll number 2. Poll closed. I don't need to relaunch poll 1. That might be the only poll. We might be done. Yep, that's it. Okay. All right, well then we're going to get into the questions. All right, here we go. And I'll go back the same way. So everybody, we can go in the same route. So Megan, Vicky, Banor, Jennifer, and Holly. Holly, you get all the extra time. Maybe I'll reverse it and then put Holly on the spot first. All right, so understanding that things may change. And for all of us, things are changing day to day. I feel like I make plans 24, 48 hours in advance, and that's okay. But as they are today, what does the fall look like at your particular institution today for your students, both that are returning to campus and for your incoming first-year students? Are you going to be online? Or are you going to be 100% in person? Are you still figuring it out? And that's okay. So Megan, we'll start with you. What does your institution look like as of today?
So as of, excuse me, this morning, we are planning to be back in person this fall. That said, excuse me, goodness, I need coffee already. We are coming up with several contingency plans if things were to change and we decide to go, partially online, completely virtual, things like that. We did decide to shorten our semester. So the semester will start 2 days early, but we will end at Thanksgiving break. So that way when students go home for Thanksgiving, they don't have to come back after that. So we're trying to limit their travel as much as possible. For new students coming in, I think this is really the most challenging thing for us, just because we are an institution where over 80% of our students come from outside of our home state. So a lot of students are coming from the East Coast, the West Coast, Hawaii, overseas, and knowing that those are still very hotspot parts of the US, so and especially overseas. So knowing that we might have some challenges there and really understanding what are the best types of backup plans for them. I think another challenge for us is that we are well known for our professional healthcare programs, so medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, physical therapy. And a lot of these programs require clinicals and, practice patient care, things like that. So also trying to figure out how can students get their hours or continue to get those hours in those programs, if they're going to be allowed in hospital and clinical settings, things like that. So trying to be optimistic, but really also planning for all scenarios over the next couple months.
All right, Vicki, next to you.
I think for us, as of last week, the plan is even for our summer semester, we will begin face-to-face teaching in Hong Kong. The plan definitely is we should resume, I mean, knock on wood, we should resume as usual for the fall semester, but we will have keeping open the option for having a hybrid model, mostly because we are not sure about international travels at this point. We are worried about visa coming in because there are students who have difficulties mailing us documents. I mean, not to the university, but mailing in their visa application to the immigration department. And also, we are not sure if the government is going to ask for a 14-day quarantine, which we have seen lifted for some countries that have seen a decrease in cases in the recent weeks. So they are slowly relaxing some of that. But if there is a 14-day mandatory quarantine for all incoming personnel, then that means the students, if they come, we have to figure that part out. So it's probably going to be a hybrid, but focusing on an in-person if we could get everyone on campus.
Vicki, you brought up a really good point. So as we move down the panel, if you can just briefly talk about, government restrictions, or if you're just, waiting on government, would be super helpful. So Benur, you're next. Let's talk about what your fall looks like.
Thank you. Well, in Germany, we are very positive that physical, in-person or face-to-face teaching will be possible. So the main plan, the default would be to start this fall semester with in-person teaching. However, knowing what Vicki said about the difficulties that freshmen and women and new students can face with the visa procedures, that may lead to some delays. So knowing that 80% of our students at Jacobs University are international students, and around 60% of them are facing visa procedures, we decided to start the fall semester in hybrid. So we split it in two halves. The first half is gonna be online, so we can enable everybody to take the courses online from where they are, and to give them the time to finish the visa procedure and join in at a later point that will be around November.
Great, thank you. All right, Jen, that's to you.
All right, so I guess things are a little bit different in Canada right now. About 3 weeks or so ago, McGill announced that we were moving to a remote learning scenario for fall 2020, and many universities have decided to go the same way for a lot of reasons. I think a lot of our campuses do have a lot of international students. We're at over 33% international, and even when we look outside our own province, another 20% or so of our students are coming from outside the province. So it definitely impacts the number of students that are able to travel to our city. So there is this idea that there will be some activity and potentially research on some of our campuses through the fall, but especially for our undergraduate students, I would say primarily it will be through remote learning. So at least on the positive side of that one is that students and staff and everyone can start preparing for this and have just over 3.5 months to really look at those remote learning options in terms of virtual labs and everything like that. With regard to sort of the immigration process, there's some different scenarios that happen in Canada. In particular with Quebec, it is a two-step process. So some of our students are already applying for the right documents, and some of it can be done online. But of course, around the world, different visa application centers are closed still. So again, that was another reason why we're hoping to start back on campus in January.
All right, Holly, that's your last.
Thank you. So Sussex, like many other UK universities, we're hoping to offer a mixture of both campus-based learning experiences and remote learning as well. And that's the way a lot of UK universities have gone. So we're planning on some campus classroom and laboratory based teaching, and that includes small group work, seminars, tutorials, and we'll be adhering to social distancing rules as per our government guidelines, and that's assuming they're of course still in place by September. We're of course working as well to make sure it's not just the learning experience like all universities of course around the world, but it's the whole student experience, so well-being, other student services that are there to support students. So as you might have seen in your news, if you look at UK news, advice from our government can quite literally change at any time with very little notice. So of course we will be constantly reviewing absolutely everything to get our campuses ready for students across the country. So for example, we'll continue to review, we have a current 2-week quarantine period upon entry to the UK at the moment, but we'll be reviewing, or the government is reviewing that, and of course universities will stay on top of that as well to ensure that our students do what they need to do and we can keep them safe too. It's worth noting as well that the way the media in the UK has reported some UK universities, they seem to have categorised some of them as going all online and some of them as going totally in person, whereas in reality, most of us are kind of offering a little bit of both, including my own university. So it's just in case there's any questions about what's being reported about Cambridge, for example, the big headline was that they're online. Well, it's just their lectures that are online, which is pretty much what we're all doing. But it's the way the media is reporting it. So it's just really worth noting to sort of inquire with individual universities, speak to me if you want, or reach out to your contacts across the UK. But yeah, we're doing a mixture of both and relying on our government to give us news as soon as possible.
That is a great reminder, Holly, for everybody out there to check directly with the institutions, because I'm assuming most of us will have updated information on our websites or talking to somebody in particular, and then instead of what you always hear on the news. Briefly, for NYU Abu Dhabi, for incoming students this fall, we are also still waiting a little bit on government information, as the majority of our students also come from outside the UAE. But for our first year students, right now it looks like we're going to be almost all virtual classes that will be here in the fall. So New York and Shanghai will be a little bit different. All right, next question. Do any of you still have students on campus? And what does that look like? How are you supporting them? Are you trying to get them back to their home country? Are they able just to stay throughout? So I'll go around the horn again. Megan, I'll start with you this time. What does it look like currently on your campus?
Yes, so we still have international students and athletes on campus. We closed our university right after spring break. So for students who are still there, we told them that they could stay, and we have no intention of pushing them out of the dorms. We do still have dining services available for them. We did ask them to all move into one dorm hall together, so we're able to clean the other buildings and use them for quarantine housing for our hospital and other services that we offer on campus. So they are socially distant in another dorm hall together. But like I said, we have no intention of asking them to leave at any time, especially for a lot of international students, they just can't go home. So if we were to ask them to leave, they essentially would be homeless.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Vicki, what does your institution look like right now?
We do have students on campus. I mean, we are between semesters right now, but even when we were back in the spring, we did have students who stayed throughout. The campus actually has remained open. We never really shut down the campus. We've been coming back to work, you know, maybe reduced hours, but the campus services have been maintained. Food services, even our health clinic on campus is still on. So right now we're not expecting a lot of changes to that, because even at the thick of it, we were still maintaining the minimal and essential services. We have actually seen some students in affected areas who reached out and said they wanted to come back for the summer, even though they don't have classes, because they felt they wanted to come back early in case of flights or quarantine or other issues. And we are working with them on that one on a case-by-case basis, because it's a lot of complications right now in terms of who gets to come and what the arrangements would look like. But we're not expecting to be kicking anyone out. Instead, we're thinking of welcoming people back on campus now.
All right, Banur.
Yeah, right. So we have students on campus as institutional housing is mandatory for our undergraduate students. So all undergraduate students have on-campus housing. So when the outbreak came, we took some precautions in terms of quarantine rules and special testing. And we noticed that for the summer, our semester came to an end last week and our graduation is next week, but we just figured out that a lot of students won't be able to get back to their home countries because of the lockdown and quarantine regulations. So what we did is extended a sort of summer stay offer for a reduced rate so that students can stay over the summer. The challenge will be, however, to keep them busy, because if you have like 400 or 500 young men over the summer on campus, you need to do special academic and non-academic offerings. So the main focus now for the summer period is how to keep students busy so they can use that time very in a
Use
good
it
way.
wisely, exactly.
Yeah.
Not too much free time. All right, Jennifer, what's going on in Canada?
Yeah, for us, I think the majority of our students, particularly our first year undergraduate students, would have gone home, especially before a lot of travel restrictions were put in place. We started we ended the semester going remote around March 13th when our students completed their semesters remotely. And so our semester ended at the end of April. And then already our summer programs had been announced that they were going to be remote. So the majority of students would have probably gone back home just to be in the comfort of their home with their families. Being at McGill, and again, a lot of our schools across Canada are similar, that it's not typically a 4-year potential dorm experience. So a lot of our students might be living in apartments in our cities. And so some did choose to stay, of course, because they can self-isolate and be in their own spaces. And as international students in particular that are coming to study in Canada, they do have international health insurance, and confirmed that with access to testing, if there was hospitalization or anything to do with COVID, that they would be covered. So some have chosen to stay. Again, most of the campus is operating sort of under essential services. So students are still doing a lot of study remotely and trying to do research as well that way.
That's great. All right, Holly, what's going on with your campus?
Thanks. So to put it into context, at Sussex, we normally have around 5,000 students staying with us at any one time. Our total student population is just under 20,000. So we have just under just under a quarter of our students that will be living with us normally. And we currently have just under 800 remaining with us. So it's still a sizable number, but far less than we normally expect. And the students that are remaining with us are mainly international students, or they may be British students that are, they've left our care system. So we are their home, essentially. It's worth mentioning as well that Sussex, like a lot of UK universities, we have single study bedrooms. So in terms of like any quarantining where necessary or isolation, students are generally able to undertake that relatively safely within their own dorm rooms on our campus. We moved to online teaching on the 23rd of March, which is when the UK went into lockdown. So we've been working hard since then to support students in their both online learning and in their well-being as well. We've got a whole new student hub that's come up, and that's there to support students who are still with us on campus, students who have returned home, students who are still at our study abroad partner universities as well. We've still got a number of students that are overseas, so it's quite interesting having to support them as well if they weren't able to return home. But yeah, the main focus is for online learning and the mental and physical well-being. So it's interesting times.
It is interesting time. It's a lot of logistics to figure out. Yeah, in Way Abu Dhabi, our spring semester, we still had we had 80% of our entire student population that stayed on campus. And some of them are slowly going back, but like many institutions, students that need to stay are staying even through the summer, and we will continue to house them over the fall. All right, shifting gears a little bit. And we actually had some people type in this question, so I'm glad we were already prepared to answer this. Talking about testing, and as with a lot of things, tests were interrupted by the pandemic, both for students that were graduating and for students that are thinking about rising into their final year of high school. So I'd like for each of you to talk about, it's kind of twofold, so it may take a little bit of, how are you assessing students? Because everybody does this a little bit different. Our current seniors who are graduating high school, IBs, A-levels, any sort of national exams are interrupted. How are you seeing that as you're moving into the admission cycle and the acceptance cycle and the enrollment cycle, right? And then thinking for next year, has your institution, and also realizing that probably everybody on this panel is not the decision maker, of how your institution will ultimately make these decisions. So no screaming from the participants. If anybody here doesn't absolutely know the answer, but thinking about going forward, has your institution made a decision on how you will be looking at applications for fall 2021? All right, Miss Megan, put you on the spot first.
So for seniors who are starting university this fall, who are looking at taking A-levels, AP, IB, any of those exams, we are considering exams as normal. So whatever scores they send in, if they're able to, we'll accept them as we typically have in the past. If there are extenuating circumstances and exams no longer exist, whether, you know, A-levels or national exams, it's okay. We understand that things have happened and changes have been made. So we will accept basically whatever your high school will deem as your final semester, final year grades. We're being incredibly flexible with that because what other option is there really at this point? For students who are in high school right now, who are juniors and thinking about standardized tests for the upcoming year, we've been test optional for students outside of the US for over 3.5 years now. So if a student's not able to take the SAT, it's not a big deal. We don't need it for admission or scholarships. So I tell students, don't stress out about it. If you're really considering Creighton, if you don't have it, it's really not the end of the world. I do a holistic review of their application. So a test score is just one piece. If they don't have that piece, there's still plenty of other components in the application for me to make a solid decision on their application. And when it comes to English language exams, we also have accepted Duolingo for over 3 years. So if they can't, you know, take the TOEFL or IELTS, Duolingo is an awesome option for students. You know, they can take it at home in an hour. I get the scores in about 48 to 72 hours automatically. So it's really a great way for students to be able to continue to submit the application items they need without having to stress about having the traditional component.
All right, thank you. Okay, Vicki.
Well, very similar, I think. So for this current cohort, we actually been updating. So definitely if the students are not able to produce, we do conditional offer of admissions based on predicted and also anticipated results, first of all. So what we have been doing is informing students as we know. So for example, like the Indonesian exam that was canceled or the other exams that were canceled, we basically have to work with them by the groups that they are in to inform them what we would do with the conditional offer of admissions in cases where the boards have come up to provide a statement of results like the IB and the A levels. We will be taking those and looking at that as we move on to confirming our offers of admissions. We have never really requested the SAT except for some students who do not have any other sort of qualifications. So students are not it's not test optional or test required as the normal sense you would look at a US college. But for us in the next year, definitely, I don't have the answer for what exactly it will look like because we don't really know what sort of public exams, what sort of requirements will be there as we move into the fall. But definitely if it is by no fault of the students that they're not able to produce those standardized requirements or exams or credentials, we definitely will have the school report and support for the students' applications, and we will probably have to invent something along the way as we move along that track.
Great. Thank you, Vicki. All right, Banur.
Thank you. Well, the situation in Germany is a little bit more tricky as so eligibility for higher education and admission rules are regulated by state law and sometimes federal laws. So we can change our rules as we want. So testing is required for some high school diplomas and curriculums, and we can change that. So what we did is, same as Vicky said, we started turning around that by issuing conditional offers upon doing the test later on campus or in a later time where the SAT, ACT, or other tests will be available. And we expanded our offering by added another test. It's called Test IS, but it's from a German kind of recognized institution, but we needed to expand our offer because the Test IS had more availability in terms of test centers. However, what happened this year with the pandemic just boosted our thoughts of making our own institutional test that will be assessed online. So we are talking in the management and with the academic leadership very seriously and urgently about making our own test pool. And as we have now experience with online assessment, as we did most of our exams online under the situation, we will be very, very likely having our own test that will be assessed online.
And will that be for graduating seniors or for rising seniors or for both constituents?
Actually, for applicants, it would just consider, you know, students, prospects that will apply to Jacobs University, and then we will offer the possibility to take the SAT, ACT, test AS, or offer our own test. That would be for sure cheaper than the SAT and more accessible as it is doable online. So that's the thought, because we can't change the fact that for certain diplomas, the testing is required by law.
That's great. All right, thank you. All right, Jennifer.
Yeah, again, for us, I think, and especially across Canada, it'll be different by institution. And I think, again, it's changing day by day. I think for the most part, if Canadian institutions, typical standardized testing is not required. And for us, it would just be by curriculum. So if you are an IB school, A-level, so on and so forth, we wouldn't typically require SATs or ACT anyway. So traditionally, it has been just with students coming in with a US diploma, regardless if it was in the US or overseas, we would require testing. And again, that's being evaluated right now, and especially with some updated news coming out of College Board late last night, all of that is being taken into consideration. I mean, if I were to stand right now, our current policy hasn't changed, so that McGill would require standardized testing. However, again, just for that particular pool. And for us, I think looking at all the other different type of curriculum coming into topics of proof of English proficiency, typical ones, TOEFL, IELTS, and McGill started accepting Duolingo as well this past winter.
That's great. And what about your students who have graduated right now and they're coming this fall? Have you seen any sort of extra requirements if they weren't able to take their final A-levels or whatever it was? Like, how is McGill kind of looking at those students?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Good question. We've actually been quite flexible, actually. So however a student will be able to graduate and receive their final diploma, regardless if it was, say, for example, French back and they couldn't write those final exams, provided they get their final diploma, all of our offers are going to be honored. So we're actually been allowing students a lot longer in order to provide those proof of graduation up till actually September 2021. Wow. So we're being pretty flexible that way. But also looking at students coming in with A-levels, IB, French back, European Abitur, what have you, to be still giving credit and exemptions for certain courses and going into upper year courses if they wish.
Okay, great. All right, Holly, what's going on in the UK?
Thanks. So, well, like everyone else
that's
said,
a big, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
What's going on in there? That's a big question. Okay, what's going on here?
What's going on in the UK? Where do I start? We've only got 30 minutes left, right? So with regard to admissions, like everyone else has said, to be honest, it's a constant and evolving area of discussion. It's very similar, to be honest, with what our friends have said so far. So with students who will hopefully still be awarded some sort of final grade or reward from their school. My own university is being really flexible with that and will essentially take whatever you have. And we hope that your school or your student school will be able to still provide some sort of qualification at the end. With the University of Sussex, we have around 2/3 of our students are British, so we're expecting a lot of A-level BTEC students as normal. So we have, of course, the challenge with the A-level exams, but we're taking what grades those students will leave school with, essentially. We're able to be more flexible this year as well because of this. So with regard to both academic and English language requirement, Sussex is new to the game in Duolingo, but we've also recently signed up within the last couple of months. And we're quite like some other UK universities, if they weren't already taking it, lots now are, but it's not an across the board thing across the country. So it's really worth checking out if you have students who are looking at coming to the UK but have issues with getting the TOEFL or IELTS, for example. Have a look at what universities are accepting, because it can really vary between us. In regard to deferring, we have had quite a lot of deferral requests, and Sussex has actually put on their website, and I've spoken to our admissions colleagues as well, we're supporting deferrals right up until the start of term. So if students want to defer, we completely understand and we will work with them to do that. The only thing I will say to those of you in the audience who work with European Union students, they may wish to make sure they consider the impact that Brexit may have upon their financial support if they do choose to defer to 2021, because we still have a lot of unanswered questions regarding EU students coming to the UK if they don't start this coming academic year. So there's that extra consideration for EU students. But yeah, generally speaking, we don't have to take tests where the UK isn't as hot on ACT and SAT, etc., as some of our friend universities are across the world, unless that student is coming with a high school diploma. So very similar to what Jennifer said, actually, for Canada, to be honest. Yeah, we'll take what you've got.
Awesome, thank you. And I would say NYU for all 3 campuses is the same. We'll take whatever you can send us as far as some sort of high school diploma. We're not going to penalize any student because their tests have been canceled or their high schools were shut down or sent remote. And we have a very flexible testing policy for any incoming student in the fall. So that will stay the same for us. Although Holly, you brought up something, you brought up deferrals. So it's a great question because we actually had somebody type that in. So before we go to our final question, I'm going to put this in here. Will everybody just go through and talk about their deferral policy, if you know what it is, if there is a decision been made, and actually I'll go back the other way this time and throw everybody off a little bit. So Jen, I'll start with you and go back the other way. Have you decided on a deferral policy for this, students coming in this fall?
All right, and I was just typing a question related to deferral, so great to continue. So in the past, we've always had a deferral policy where students up until start of term could request a deferral, recognizing already that there's some challenges and limitations to getting study documents on time, particularly when students wait to the last minute. But that will still be in effect where students can request a deferral. However, we are seeing more requests come in. So in the past where we've only received maybe a couple of hundred a year, it was easy to accept all of them and everyone can defer. Obviously this year it might be a little bit harder. So there is some more limitations put in place where deferrals have to be sort of requested a little bit earlier now, up until the end of July. And typically when a student defers, the question is, well, why are you deferring? Are you planning a gap year? Are you deciding to work for the year or stay home and just, recoup from a tough senior year, what have you? But because some of those limitations are going to be in place this fall where there aren't the abilities to travel and do gap years and such, the university is going to work with each student and sort of understand why they want to take a gap year and try to accommodate, but recognizing that that could have an impact obviously for fall 2021. As much as possible, we're going to try to encourage our students to start in the fall, and if it's financially related that they can't in terms of cost and tuition and the impact right now with COVID on the economy, there's more support put in measures for financial aid, for example, for international students, and ensuring that hopefully our students can start. But so there's the policy there, but it looks like we'll probably have to be a little bit more strict in terms of the number we can actually process and hopefully encourage our students to come if they can this September.
Awesome.
Virtually.
Virtually.
Yeah.
All right, Banur. How about you and deferrals?
Yeah, so normally our policies foresee a possibility of deferral within 18 months, so a maximum of 18 months where the student can defer without losing the financial aid package or the merit-based kind of offer. Beyond these 18 months, it would be a readmission, so a student will have to be admitted again. We were in the process of, we had 2 intakes, the big intake in fall and a small intake in spring that was specially actually made only for deferrals to be able to join. And just at the beginning of this year, we were in the process of stopping the spring intake, and then COVID came and that changed a lot. So we said we're gonna do 1 more year, a spring intake for deferrals to allow students that despite the online teaching, despite the grace period of 2 additional months to finish the visa, can join, so they will not have to lose 1 whole year. Maybe they can join in spring and can continue their study without that time lost. However, as Jennifer said, the decision of a spring start is not that easy. So we took it out of the forums and we do it only in consultation and deep counseling with the students. So we don't make it easy. We talk with the student, we talk sometimes with the parents and the counselor and see if it's the right thing to do. So it's not an automatic process, the spring one. However, for the fall, it's easy, it's just one click. You just change your parameter and you say, I'm starting fall next year.
Okay, that's great. All right, Vicky, what about you guys?
To be very honest, we've never been really good with deferrals. It's not something that the university centrally decides. It's actually up to each of the faculty and departments. So they've actually usually grant deferrals only on grounds of medical reasons or military services, that type of issues. This year, if there are visa issues, because there is expectations that they could do a hybrid mode when coming in, it may not be too, I mean, I don't see that as a huge flexibility suddenly being introduced, keeping in mind that because we are very heavily regulated in our quotas by the government. So we are not allowed, for example, we're allowed to take in 334 students in engineering, not 335. So with that, the deferrals is going to throw the next cohort into a big guessing game. So I'm not thinking it will be very likely, but it could change tomorrow. But as of right now, there's no updates on the policy for deferral.
Understandable. All right, thanks, Vicky. Okay, Megan.
So Creighton in particular has always had a pretty liberal deferral policy where students have always been able to defer to either spring or next fall. We will defer up to 2 years, but typically I think students will do either a semester or a year. Kind of like Jen, in the past, we've always asked as well for a statement for what students are doing. In past years, it usually is students needed a gap year, so we'd ask them to tell us about their gap year. Now, we're not asking for quite as much information. If a student says that it's related to, financial hardships with COVID or travel or concern about travel, anything like that, we'll grant it. I know there's often the question now for U.S. universities about how this is going to affect admissions for the following year. It depends on the type of institution. So for an institution like ours, where we don't necessarily have a set number of seats every year, we of course always have enrollment goals. But if we exceed those goals, awesome. So we will count our deferrals as students who have been admitted and intend to come next fall, but it's not going to stop us from necessarily admitting students also for next fall. But there are institutions in the US where that is going to be a reality, that they may have limited opportunities for future students for, EDEA options or regular decision. I think for students who are going into their final year of high school and really thinking about some of those more competitive institutions to apply to, I think they're going to have to really figure out how their application sets themselves apart from other students, which has always been the case. They're competing against a lot of other top students in the world. So really, what can they do in a time like this? How can they take advantage of being home and doing, a virtual internship or virtual job shadowing, anything like that, to really set themselves apart to be admitted to some of those more selective schools, given, the deferrals as well.
No, you're correct. There could be some institutions out there that are very liberal with deferrals, and who knows for sure what that may look like for fall 2021 and what those spaces will take up. So I think it's hard to play the guessing game at this moment and try to assume what fall 2021 will be, but just do your best and always apply to the institution, that becomes your top school regardless, because again, who would have guessed we would be in a pandemic, right? All right, so Megan, you a great segue into our final question that we had on our list before we kind of moved into Q&A, was talking about fall 2021. So all of my panelists know that the majority of our participants are on the high school side. So this is a great opportunity to talk about what your fall non-travel travel plans are, how you would like to meet with prospective students around the world. And one of the questions that actually just came up while we were here, which I think is great and relevant to this, is what can the high schools do, maybe on their student profile this year, or maybe with letters of recommendation, to let us know what has happened in their school that's COVID related or that might relate to their students. So talk about fall travel, and with a audience out there who is listening intently, and many of them are high school counselors, maybe some ideas or thoughts of how you navigate recruitment of students. So, all right, so you guys have shifted around a little bit. So Jen, can I start with you? You guys have moved in my panel. It's okay. Jen, I'm going to start with you now.
Musical Zoom boxes,
Exactly.
I guess.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
So I think, again, I think as everyone will probably mention, is we're probably looking at a lot of different scenarios for the fall. For sure, we've already started sort of remote opportunities and looking at virtual recruitment and virtual tours and all of that fun stuff that's happening at the university. So definitely for I think the first few months, it'll look like we'll be sharing a lot of our content like this, and hopefully be able to pack our suitcases, crossing fingers, and be able to travel. And it'll probably roll out very slowly, and that might be, again, meeting with students and counselors across Canada first, and then seeing how countries start to open up and what the reality will be for even our host schools. Will you be allowed to accept visitors on campus? Will we be able to meet with students and such? So I guess it's going to be a day-by-day process, but first scenario would be probably staying in our homes in the fall and reaching out virtually in a variety of ways. We've already connected sort of one-on-one with schools, one-on-one with students, but also working on collaborating with our colleagues. So for those that are universities on joining us today, I think that's another opportunity where we can all connect together and present sessions to a lot of students from around the world.
I think that's a great idea. All right, Banur, I move on to you.
Yeah, also as Jennifer said, so we will be monitoring the situation day by day, week by week, and I think we're gonna make it depend on the region. So I think we have a hemisphere on the right that maybe earlier with the going out with the exit plans than the hemisphere on the left, so the Western hemisphere. So we'll be monitoring the situation. We have been thinking about reducing our travel the last couple of years because as a part of our corporate social responsibility and for environmental reasons. But now I think this pandemic is boosting and accelerating our decision. However, looking to my team, they are very looking forward to get back traveling, and they miss the contact with students, counselor, and people. As a responsible person, I would say safety goes first, safety for the partners and for the team, but we will monitor and I will take advantage of every chance to let people travel so they get back to the groove of the work and get back to the contact. That's why we do it.
No, I agree. That's exactly why we do it. That's why we're all in these jobs.
Yeah.
All right, Vicky, what about you? What's your plan for the fall?
I think right now we're at the stage of thinking if we have to stay online, what else can we do other than, you know, locking students in the Zoom sessions, you know, one after the other. My team is pretty much hating me for it right now, but that's what we are thinking. Definitely, I think in Hong Kong, we are okay with the traveling, but I don't think international travel is going to be the norm for the fall. And so we've already gotten some invites for virtual fairs, virtual sessions, and we are definitely participating in those. The key for us is actually sort of thinking how we could increase contact, one-on-one contact with students to sort of compensate that lack of, you know, face-to-face time when we travel. But that is our plan right now. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, I get the same thing. All right, Miss Megan.
So fall travel for me likely will not be happening. I think for a multitude of reasons that everybody has shared already. Of course, it's challenging to try to figure out what is the best way to reach, you know, students and counselors without, you know, overwhelming them with the number of virtual options that are out there. Or as Vicky just said, without trying to, you know, constantly trap them into a Zoom room and give them information. So we moved our deposit deadline to June 1st. So now that we're past that, I could actually now start really thinking about fall and really digging into our data from the last year or so, as well as looking at the data from the virtual events that we've done over the last couple of months to figure out, going forward, what are the best types of events? Is it going to be, a one-on-one, me just talking about Creighton with a high school, or doing a small group type of event, or doing a big fair? And trying to figure out, where's my time and money going to be best spent, as well as what's really going to be supporting the high schools best. I was fortunate enough to be part of a conversation a couple weeks ago with a lot of universities and high school counselors around the world, to kind of start chatting about how we can all work together to make sure that we're supporting high schools as best that we can, and students as best we can, because at the end of the day, that's what we really need to do, is make sure we're focusing on what's best for students. And especially if students are still going to be in a virtual high school setting, how do we make sure we're not overwhelming them with too much virtual time, but also giving them the information they need? So there were some great ideas that came out of that. I know will be shared in the International ACAC Facebook group, about ways that we can kind of all collaborate together to do stuff. It's really just kind of, looking at all of those options to see how best to serve students going forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. All right, Holly, what are your thoughts on fall travel?
Pretty similar to everyone else's, to be honest. We're looking predominantly for virtual options, and like colleagues have said so far, we've received a number of invites, etc., which is great. We do also recognise as well that travel may differ per region of the world. So I'm sure, like your offices, we split ourselves into different regions, so we all manage a separate section of the world. For me personally, I'm not expecting to be travelling to Europe for the remainder of 2020. Hence, I am looking at virtual options, and we also need to take into consideration whether we have a quarantine when we arrive at our destination country, when we come back, or both. And so what previously might have been a 2-hour fare in Paris that I could get to very quickly from the UK might end up being a month-long trip away from home with 2 lots of quarantine, which, as much as I love Paris, may not be worth a month out of my life to do so if there's a different virtual option. Some of the things I've been doing recently, I'm sure much the same as others, is lots of virtual workshops. So yeah, a lot of Zoom going on, but it's been working really well. So I've been delivering various workshops directly into schools on a live basis, which has been working pretty well. Been doing lots of live chats as well, particularly through Instagram and things like that. That's been going pretty well too. If schools have anything that they want to update UK universities with regard to the pandemic, so whether that be the awards or grades that they're issuing, etc. If they want to update their website or perhaps their school profile, they can include a shortened URL in the UCAS reference, so it doesn't take up too much of their space. And if they include that, then our admissions staff can read it, so we can see if there's any updates that are necessary, but it doesn't detract from counsellors writing about their student that's applying to us.
Thank you, Holly. Anyone else? I'll just put a general question out to the panelists. Any other updates as far as that you would like to hear from the counselor that you can think of now through a letter of recommendation or so forth? I'll just put it out to everybody if you have something that you would like to suggest.
I think the only thing I would add is, in terms of like the high school profile or the letter of recommendation, if there's something extraordinary that's happened in your school, like a change in grading, or with a particular student, make sure we know about it. As well, it seems that the Common App is going to add a question about how has COVID-19 affected you as a student. My recommendation for students is to really only complete that question if it's something unique to you and not something that everybody else is going to say, such as, I had to shift to a virtual environment. Well, we know that's a challenge. We're already taking that into account with your grades and other things, but that's not something necessarily unique to you, because really that's you and basically every student around the world. So really making sure that if there is a unique, situation, that we're aware of it.
Thank you, Megan. All right, again, I'll put this out to everybody. A question come in. If you know for sure that your country that you live and work in is going to require students to have a quarantine, does your institution have a plan of what that is going to look like when students are able to return to campus? And whoever wants to speak up can be happy to speak up.
Yeah, I can answer that. For the UK, it differs per university. So at the moment we have the 2-week quarantine. Our country is pretty well set up if this is necessary. So our government, for like not just students, they're providing accommodation. We're suspecting it's going to be something like the Holiday Inn next to Heathrow Airport, but nonetheless accommodation for them to quarantine in. But also on our campuses, as I mentioned earlier, we mainly have single study bedrooms. So it is a possibility that students can quarantine on campus. Some universities as well are offering that 2-week quarantine period for free, so students don't have to pay for their accommodation at all. And for my own university, we're hoping that's going to happen, but it's not confirmed yet, so I can't say that for sure, but it's certainly in discussion.
Great. Anyone else want to jump in on the quarantine? Banor, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So similar to Holly's statement, so we have single bedrooms, so we don't know if there will be quarantine obligations on September or November, but we are prepared as we have single bedrooms, and I think we will be delivering food daily for students that are under quarantine. One additional thing about the quarantine thing, because generally quarantine would be around 14 days, well, that's the general rules at the moment. So we are additionally exploring the idea of intensive testing. So everybody that is quarantined or from coming internationally and has to be quarantined, we are exploring the idea of testing the students to let them probably leave the quarantine earlier than the 14 days. So if the student is tested and he's negative, he can leave the quarantine in 1 or 3 days, depending on the test results.
Okay, that's interesting. Megan, did you go ahead?
So in the US, this is a state-by-state regulation for quarantining. So right now, Nebraska is a state where people arriving from overseas have to quarantine for 2 weeks. This is set to expire, though, I believe in 10 days. So we'll see after that what if they're going to continue that or not. If we do continue that, we do have quarantine housing on campus. So students will have a dorm hall to go to where we'll make sure to deliver food. In terms of campus protocols going forward as well, the university will be asking every student, staff, and faculty member to sign a code of conduct in relation to COVID-19, where we'll be asked to make sure we're wearing face masks when we're in any public setting, basically anywhere on campus that we're not in our office by ourselves. We're going to have to wear a face mask, make sure we're using hand sanitizer several times a day, keeping distance between people in group settings, things like that. So hopefully we can really limit any possibilities of the virus being transferred person to person across campus.
Yes, and I understand that all of these answers can change within the next few weeks and months as all of this look as we're going for the fall semester. We have 3 minutes left, and so I'll just go around the horn one more time and see if there's anything else, just a final update, questions, concern that you would like to add to this. We have answered a lot of questions that have come in. Also, there's a lot of very specific questions that I think are relevant, but might be very different. And a lot of the panelists may not have the answers to it because they're not part of the admissions office. A lot of things that happens on our campus are not necessarily through the admissions office, and they're actually being answered and figured out by campus life, by senior leadership. But I do think that there's a lot of questions that come up that possibly could be small breakout sessions at the conference. And I think that this has been great to kind of see some of these very specific detailed informations that are related to what campus life is going to look like, what actual study abroad would look like, and not necessarily students who are coming for a 4-year, 3-year degree, which I think people are also thinking about some of these short-term programs around the world. But also, it's been very reassuring to hear from my colleagues around the world that we're here for your students. Everybody has answered, we are doing the best that we can to ensure that we have access to students around the world, no matter where they're coming from, no matter what our campus may look like in the fall, what government regulations are put into place, whether or not a student can actually you know, go and graduate from their high school. So I've appreciated this time. And I think with a very hard week, it's actually reassuring to sit in a room like this and hear all the positive things as we're moving forward in this really trying and uncertain time. So I just want to say thank you for International ACAC volunteering me into doing this. It was very well worth it. Any last minute words from my panelists before we say goodbye? I will let.
Maybe I could just mention, I think, yes. Amy, you said it so well, but I think there are a lot of positives that have come out of this, I think, in that this remote access has given a lot more opportunity for collaboration, and that might be amongst high schools where everyone is coming together now to bring all their students together to learn from different universities, and on the other side, universities getting to learn from different counselors. But I've also really appreciated the fact that even within my own institution, I've been able to reach out to a lot of different peers and colleagues and combine our efforts and present more about the institution and learning so much more about areas of like teaching and learning services and how our faculty will be on board remotely. So there's some positives about this virtual that they're really starting to maximize now. So I think it can only get better while we're in this framework until we can actually see you in person. So it won't, hopefully you'll see it's gonna be a lot more exciting.
I agree with you.
I wanted to raise thank you. I wanted to raise a last thank you and recognition to all professionals in the education in all stages worldwide. It is amazing. Campus life departments, school teachers, school counselors, professors, everyone. It is amazing how the whole sector, the whole education worldwide just adjusted that fast and did their best beyond the call of duty for the sake of the students, young men and young women everywhere in the world. It is really amazing. And it makes me proud to belong to this, let's call it word. And I hope it continues and gets always better. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Banor. Vicky, did you have some final thoughts?
I just wanted to say, as Jen said it so well, I don't think I have much to add, but I just want to say, I think many of us are looking to learn from this experience, and I think we know it's difficult, and I do hope the counselors there do let the students know, universities know how difficult a time it is for them as well, and do give them the reassurance that we're not out there to make their life more difficult than it already has, and hopefully this session has given them some sort of reassurance in that sense.
I agree. Thank you so much. Ms. Megan.
The last thing I would say is that please make sure to stay in touch with us. If you have questions or concerns, or students have questions or concerns, let us know. As we've said several times, things keep changing daily, and that means that our policies also have to continue to change. But we don't know what to advocate for you and your students if you don't reach out to us and tell us, you know, what questions you have, what stressors you have, what changes are happening in your country or your city. The more that you communicate with us, the better advocates we can be for you and your students on campus as we continue to change and adapt our policies to help support students in these upcoming years.
Completely agree. And just as a reminder, if you have not registered for, oh, Holly, you got one more. Go for it, Holly. Go for it.
Nothing much to add. It's just really to say that in a way we're all grieving the world that we left behind, and of course we're all socially distancing, but like everyone else has said, in a way I feel closer to many of you across our community, and as Jennifer said as well, within my own university I've been reaching out to people who I've not previously been able to meet, but it's I just hope some good will come out of all of this, and I feel that some positive steps have been taken in our communities too.
I completely agree. And just one final thought, don't forget to register for the virtual International ACAC conference. I think a lot of great conversations will stem from that. I've recognized it from this. I think there's a lot of detailed information that we can get from there, as well as there is another session very similar to this one, but I will say probably not as good because my panelists were the best, in 11 hours. And it's going to be the same format. So if it works with your time frame, you can stay up or wake up and watch another one. But thank you again to all the panelists. It was great, just kind of rapid fire. I appreciate you being willing to go with the flow and to answer all the questions. All right, with that, I'm going to end the webinar, and it is like a hardcore end, which is the one hard thing about Zoom. When it's done, it's done. But I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate hearing from all of you and seeing so many names pop up on the chat and the Q&A. Looking forward to sometime again when I will see you all in an airport or on a plane or somewhere around the world. Be safe, stay sane, and I will see you all very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.